Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, which is an introduction to the Central Bank Regulatory Sandbox, a conversation with with people from the payment systems unit of or directorate or department from the central bank, which is the Bank of Zambia in this instance. It's a privilege to have here joining us for today Miriam Kamuza, who is the acting director of the payment systems from of the Bank of Zambia, and Jimmy Kuvaras, who is the acting assistant director also of the payment systems developments and operations of the Bank of Zambia. And this is a great conversation to have with the current state in which we are able to now use technology to develop new solutions that address or give or provide new solutions actually within the area of finance. And today's conversation will largely be around payments, but also it's great to find out what the central bank is doing to encourage new solutions come up, especially financial technology solutions that help get more people involved and that provide access to more people with regards to access to finance, access to ways to make payments, access to save money, access to make investments. So we will get to the starting point of this conversation. And I'll start off with inviting Miriam into the conversation by asking you, as a starting point to this conversation, would you kindly help us with understanding what a regulatory sandbox is?
Thank you very much, Simunza, and good afternoon, everybody. Perhaps before I go into explaining, or we go into explaining what a regulatory sandbox is, let me just mention that the regulatory sandbox is one of the initiatives that falls under the Bank of Zambia strategic plan that runs from 2020 to 2023. This strategic plan focuses on two areas, that is financial stability and also financial inclusion. And the sandbox is very much part and parcel of the initiatives that the Bank of Zambia has earmarked for development. And I must mention that the sandbox really is there to be an enabler of development in terms of financial products and services. And we look forward to implementing it and having participants come into the sandbox that will be able to test their products and services. Before issuing the directives, which were issued to the market in April this year, we actually consulted very widely. We had both internal and external consultations. We consulted with the banks, with the fintechs, and also other cooperating partners on what we wanted to see in terms of the guidelines and also the regulatory sandbox. So what we have today is something that the Bank of Zambia has come up with together with the key stakeholders that play a key role in the provision of payment services in the financial sector. So I've said a mouthful, but I thought it was very important to mention that. Currently, we are looking at financial inclusion standing at 69.7. We moved it from about 59% over the last, from about 2015 to 2020. This is a great achievement from the bank and also the stakeholders and yourselves and the financial service providers that have been able to push the financial inclusion agenda forward. And it is our hope that by 2023, we'll reach the mark of 80%. And in order to do this, we have instruments or tools such as the regulatory sandbox that should help us move towards this target. Thank you. Perhaps on the objectives of the sandbox, I don't know, Simunza, whether you want Jimmy to come across, but in a nutshell and at a very high level, it's an enabler for development of financial products and services. Thank you.
Oh, great. And so, Jimmy, if I bring you into this conversation around, and like Miriam said, I'd love to bring you in to discuss the objectives, but could you also just, for those of us that are like total newbies to this terminology of what a sandbox is supposed to be, what is it? Is it a room? Is it a place? And I know that we're using frames like guidelines. So what are the objectives that actually we are using terms like guidelines? So help discuss that and give us a look at what the guidelines would be.
Thank you for that, and good afternoon, everyone else. So basically what the sandbox does is As a regulator, ideally, financial services is a regulated activity. So no one is allowed to offer those services until they're approved by the Bank of Zambia. So what the sandbox is basically guidance to the market to tell them that in a way, if you are not yet regulated by the Bank of Zambia, there's this guidance and this sort of rules that would allow you to test an innovation that you may have within certain rules and within a certain period of time. On a small scale, it will not be very wide scale like what you would find for a licensed entity. That then allows you to test your product, tweak it, and improve on it so that you can then see how you move on with your innovation. So it's basically what you would previously call something like a pilot test. It's just an environment guidance that allows you to test your innovation. And in terms of the objectives, what are we trying to, what's the end game? If you look to what director was speaking to, we have financial stability as a focus area for the bank, as well as financial inclusion. Now, in achieving financial inclusion, I think everyone, yourself included, we have all noted that digital technology has become an enabler to financial inclusion. So by allowing innovation to prosper, you are then allowing new innovative products that can be accessed by people to sort of come onto the market. So innovation, thereby we also increase financial inclusion. Thanks, Moon.
And Simuza, just to wrap up that one, I would like to also mention that with a lot that's going on in terms of fintech, not only in Zambia, but at a global level, there's a lot going on in that space. And as regulator, you want the development of products and services to be done in a safe and efficient manner. So the sandbox also provides us that opportunity as the central bank, as the regulator, to ensure that whatever is put out there for the customers to use is actually very safe and very efficient in terms of being a payment mechanism that people can use safely and be comfortable and confident in using. Thank you, Simons.
Oh, great. And so if I hear you correctly, what we're saying is that a startup or a corporate or whoever is going to get involved in payment systems, which are clearly regulated by the central bank, if they come up with an innovative way of doing this, use a new technology, use a new platform, use a new way that currently doesn't exist within the frameworks, they can develop a relationship closely with the regulator in which this can be observed and understood as it rolls out into the market. Is that a good understanding?
Yes, it is. I can see your face. You're sort of like doubting whether you do understand. Yes, the sandbox is not only, let me just mention that it's not only for payment systems. It also looks at also banks. Banks have got various products. It will allow them to also come and test various different banking products. If they are new, they are novel, and they would like to see how it would work with the market, they are welcome to come into the sandbox. They can apply. It will also apply to non-banks also. All these institutions are supervised by the Bank of Zambia, so it won't just be restricted to payments. I just wanted to make it clear that it's any other product that's related to either banking, non-banks, or payment systems related to the services that the Bank of Zambia actually supervises. So it's quite wide, and we are really looking forward to the applications, and we hope that we can together move things forward and develop the payment systems, especially in terms of fintechs. Thank you.
Yeah. In that light, then, what are the benefits? What are the benefits for, like you've mentioned, the number of people the number of groupings that can apply to participate in the sandbox, and we now understand why they would take advantage of this, and what would the benefits they would get from using the sandbox framework?
Jimmy, I think you're here. You're the guru in that one. Can you just outline that, the benefits?
Okay, thank you, Miriam. Maybe in terms of regulatory navigation, when a startup is coming onto the market, in some cases, people may be new to the idea. They have an idea, but they may not understand the regulation. So they may have a product and it's still in early days. Some of the things, the requirements that are there, they may find them that they sort of become roadblocks to their idea. So the intention is now to help them through that regulatory journey. There may be requirements that are sort of, they may not be able to meet. So it's to guide them and help them overcome that uncertainty in terms of getting licensing or getting their product approved. So once that that allows them now to sort of introduce their product to the market, of course, under the oversight of the bank in this, under the regulatory sandbox, but different from the normal approval process, licensing requirements or approval processes that would do. So you can see there's a sort of relaxing of regulation in this case, and that allows them to introduce their product to the market, and then they're able to lend. The Bank of Zambia is able to oversee that, and that has added benefits to both the Bank of Zambia in us being able to identify certain risks and advising the entity on what they can and what they can't do, and the entity is also able to tweak their products so consumers then benefit from a much improved product and probably safer to the market.
Oh, great. And in that light, can any product or service be introduced to the sandbox? So yeah, do we have any qualifying criteria for what we're looking for as to what products and services can be introduced?
So in terms of product and services, like Miriam was speaking to earlier, this is mainly for those products and services that fall within the mandate of the Bank of Zambia. So these will be the mandate of the Bank of Zambia is mainly given by various acts. This could be the Bank of Zambia Act itself, the Banking and Financial Services Act, as well as the National Payment Systems Act. In terms of eligibility criteria, what sort of products would then be accepted in the sandbox? This has to be a product that is ready. So if a startup comes to us and says they have this new product or thinking of an idea, if it's not yet ready, then we ask them to refine it. So we want a product that is ready so that customers can then consume that product. So we want something that's almost ready to be used by the market. That will also help us also deal with people that are ready to try out that product. And then the product or service also, it must be a genuine innovation. So right now, if you have a product that's already on the market, then there's no use. It would sort of be an abuse of this framework to have that in the sandbox. The idea is to introduce new products or those that are very different from what is already on the market. We want to see a new innovation. That is the idea behind Sandbox. And one other thing the applicant must also do is to convince the bank to tell us why should they fall under the Sandbox. Remember, we are relaxing regulation here. We are making it faster for them to introduce their product. But we want to see, is there justification for this product to come under the Sandbox? Why should it didn't go under normal licensing or the normal approval processes of the bank? Another eligibility criteria that the applicant is required to do is to identify to the bank what risks they see in their product and what measures they intend to put in place to safeguard customers in mitigating those risks. Remember, even it's a sandbox, but when you're testing these new products, you're giving it to real people, real consumers. So it is important that all risks that are related to these products and services are managed properly so that there's no harm to customers. Then just to wrap up on that, a customer also must show to the bank, once the product is implemented, what sort of benefit will consumers and other stakeholders take from these products and services, and which regulation also they want the bank to sort of relax for them to be successful in the sandbox.
Oh, great. Awesome. Yes, Miriam, did you have something to add there?
Just to add on one more issue, one more aspect, the applicant must also have an exit strategy they're going to enter the market and test their product. So we also want to see how they'll pull back in case they're asked to pull back, in case they don't qualify to be licensed by the Bank of Zambia, what will be the strategy? And in this case, we're looking out for the customer. The customer shouldn't lose out. How will they be able to access their funds if this applicant wants to exit the sandbox? And also just to mention that it's not, Jimmy has mentioned that we may relax certain regulations. That's why we're asking you, if you're an applicant coming into the sandbox, you must identify which regulation you feel is hindering your product. Sometimes regulations can be too stringent for certain products, and maybe certain products would want to have a waiver. And if that service provider is able to manage the risk that the regulation is speaking to, sometimes the regulator will relax that regulation. But the most important point is to note is that risk must be minimized. So there may be certain conditions that a financial service provider or an applicant might put in place to mitigate the risk that the regulator may have perceived beforehand. And then also, of course, we'll have conditions. We might have relaxed the regulations, but we'll give them conditions that will ensure that the product is rolled out or tested in a safe manner. And even as they are testing, we can actually give them more conditions if we perceive that the risk is increasing, or if it's reducing, we might loosen up some aspects just to make sure that we are providing that balance for this product to either thrive or test positively or negatively. So it's quite an interesting tool or product or development for the financial sector, because it will give people a lot of leeway to actually test products that are out there. A number of times we've had people come to the central bank, and once we talk to the regulations and what they need to comply with, some of them have disappeared with very brilliant ideas, and you wouldn't like to see that. Sometimes you'd like them to actually go out and test and understand this product further, and perhaps even in future roll it out to the market. Thank you, Simons.
Oh, great. Yeah, and which actually leads me to my next question, actually, and we talk about there are licensed entities like banks that exist, and so on, that could have a new product that they want to bring into the market, or there could be startups that are beginning and are not yet licensed that could also want to bring a product into the market that are under and the product or service would normally be under the regulation of the central bank. So that would be part of what makes them want to apply to work in the sandbox. But then how do they now get to apply? What's this process of applying to now say, okay, great, I have this idea, I'm applying for a license, but then how do I apply to get involved in the sandbox?
Maybe I can take that, Smoother.
Okay.
So we have issued these guidelines, and the guidelines have an appendix, an application form that an applicant is required to fill in. For those entities that are already licensed by the Bank of Zambia, like payment system providers or commercial banks or other non-banks, they simply fill in that application form and they submit that application form to Director, Payment Systems. For those entities who are not yet licensed by the Bank of Zambia, but want to participate in the sandbox, there's some additional requirements that we also need from them. We require them to submit a certified copy of their certificate of incorporation. And then for the shareholders, directors, and managers of that company, we require that they submit their CVs. There are also forms that we require each of those individuals to complete. There's a form called the Director's Questionnaire and another form called the Vital Statistics form. Where any of those shareholders, senior managers, or directors are not Zambian residents, then they are also required to submit to the bank a security screening from their country of origin, something that just goes to shows about their fit and proper for them to be accepted as a director, shareholder, or senior manager. And then
Great.
that application, once submitted to the bank, is then determined within a period of 30 days. So we'll then be able to get back to the applicant within 30 days, which is markedly lower than the licensing processes. Sometimes could be 90 days, and in other regulations, it could be 180 days. So the period also is is reduced, because that is just within a month, the application is completed.
So just to support Jimmy, the process usually when somebody is interested in coming into the sandbox begins with engaging ourselves. So the best thing to do is for whoever is interested to test their product in the sandbox to get in touch with the Bank of Zambia, and we will guide. Actually, everything that Jimmy is speaking to is contained in a document that can be shared with you so that you are able to look through everything that is required, ask questions. We normally encourage engagement at the initial stages so that we guide you on what you need to do. Jimmy has mentioned a number of things that might scare people, but those are simple things that people can do and will guide you in what you really need to submit with your application and the documentation. Sometimes if you can't get certain things in place, we'll give you a bit of time to actually put together something that the central bank can actually look at. So please get in touch with us first, and we'll give you everything that you need, the entry criteria and everything that the application form and any other documentation that you might need to submit to the Bank of Zambia, we will provide via email. I hope we can be able to share an email during this session that you can get in touch with us on.
Okay. Yes, and we will gladly, if we can gladly share that email address. So we know that part of this is to first and foremost get people to have access to make use of technology to gain access to financial access, and because of this, we're encouraging people to dream big, to dream about how they can use technology to be able to do this, and we'll allow people to test these products and services. But how will, and these are real people, how will potential risks be managed to ensure that the public, the consumers, the public, businesses, or whoever it is that then use these products which are still in test form over a period of time that they're in the sandbox is managed, that potential risks are managed?
First of all, at the time that somebody is applying to come into the sandbox, the Bank of Zambia will evaluate that application. And one of the processes that we undertake during the evaluation is carry out a risk assessment. It's at that point that we'll critically look at the risk elements that pertain to that product or service and be able to determine whether we can put it out there in the first place. So you could actually fail at that very point if you haven't managed to demonstrate to the Bank of Zambia that you take care of the risk that is related to that product. Then after that, of course, we're putting you into a test environment, which the Bank of Zambia has had input into, and we are making sure that the risk is minimized and managed, and we'll monitor, we'll move together with the applicant as they are testing the product. We'll also be monitoring the output from that product. We'll be engaging with the customers that are also using that product to find out what their experience is and how certain challenges have been resolved. So it's a number of issues that we're going to be using to make sure that we try and manage this risk. We've got a technical team that will be on the ground and will be looking and testing with the applicants. We've got people from ICT, we've got people from bank supervision, non-banks, we've got people from our risk department, all taking part and parcel in this process just to review the product and make sure that the risk is managed as the product is being tested in the sandbox. And then thereafter, we decide as the central bank as to whether this product can graduate and be licensed or designated to go out into the market. Even at the moment, anything that we've licensed or designated, we actually continue to monitor Continue to monitor how people are mitigating risks and how they are taking care of. If there's any indication that some product is getting risky, even after we've licensed it at the central bank, we zoom into that space, carry out inspections, carry out checks, and make sure that risk is addressed as quickly as possible.
Great, awesome. Before we open up for questions from our lovely guests that have joined us here on Zoom or on Facebook, we would like to, I think I just want to hear from you. Share what the benefits and why you're encouraging people to participate and to consider participating in the sandbox. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Simoza. I can take that up. So the benefits to both the prospective applicant as well as the Bank of Zambia. First, it gives the prospective applicant access to the regulator. Sometimes the prospective applicant may not know the regulatory process. Let's take, for example, somebody who's not licensed. They may not know what sort of license they will need to require for their product, or what sort of steps they will need to go through to eventually get that license. And also guidance from the regulator in terms of the steps they need to take and the tweaks they may need to make to their product. So that access to the regulator and the expertise is then given to that applicant. And then second of all, and this is key especially for business, in a business sense, is now they have the ability to test those products on the market. Ideally, they would have to wait until they are yet licensed. Now, in this case, they are being given within a period after they make the application. If everything goes well, in 30 days, they can then roll out their product to the market. So the time to the market is also markedly reduced. And that is key, especially for a startup, because now you're starting to try out your market and get the much needed revenue. So you also have reduced time to market. Another thing also is consumer protection. Given that the product has been seen by a regulator and there are tweaks and safeguards that have been made to that product, then consumers are protected in a way that the product is now likely to be safer than if it didn't undergo through that process. Another issue also is access to finance. I think if you look at various reports where regulatory sandbox has been done, the profile of the applicant is sort of raised in that their product has gone through a regulator and it's passed through that process. So investors are likely to have increased confidence in that product, and they may support that entity. Also, product acceptance on the part of customers. If customers see that this is something that's been reviewed by a regulator, they're also likely to have much increased confidence in that product. Lastly, we can look at in terms of risk management. Remember, the process they're applying, and even throughout their participation in the regulatory sandbox, they're getting advice, they're getting comments from a wide range of experts within the central bank. So it's more likely that their product would have been tweaked in a certain way so that it's not risky to any eventual consumer.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Awesome. I'm going to veer into the comments now and ask us a couple of questions that have been asked here, and start off with a question from Pochinyemba, who's asking, are there any costs associated with participating in the sandbox? I'll ask Miriam.
Yeah, for now, normally when you are applying for a license or designation, there's usually a license fee. But for now, for the regulatory sandbox, we do not have a fee. Why don't we have a fee? It's because we want to encourage people to come onto the sandbox. That's not to say that a fee might not come along the way, but the initial thing is to allow the sandbox to take off. We need it to take off. So the cost that an applicant will incur will be related to the development of their own product. It will be related to them providing the service to the customer in a safe and efficient manner. So in terms of entry into the sandbox, initially, that's why we're encouraging you to come forward quickly before the Bank of Zambia now says, look, we've got too many applications. Maybe it's time to introduce a fee. So those that will come up first will be able to enjoy this particular exemption for the time being.
Oh, great. So free access to the sandbox for now. For now. So
free access to the regulator for now.
For now, free access to the regulator for now. All right.
Yes.
In the event that, Jimmy, in the event that an application uses a payment gateway, this is Akabana Litebede asking, that has already been licensed by the bank, do they need another license?
Thank you, Simonza. It's sort of a tricky question. It depends on what that entity is actually doing. So you have payment system entities that may require the services of a payment gateway. So if they're offering payment services, whether they're doing money transfers or they're dealing with customers, they're accepting people, or they're involved in the payment chain in any point, most likely they may need a license. But for that, our advice would be like Miriam put it earlier, inquire with the bank and then we'll be able to advise. It's very difficult to put it just based on the question to say whether or not they need a license. I think that they inquire and then we'll be able to guide.
Yeah. Perhaps your building is intimidating. People are afraid of coming over to ask you directly.
Yes, we're trying our best to smile.
We know you're very friendly. I think it's the building.
Yes. And then just to help on that question a little bit, just maybe we'll put it a bit into perspective for the person that has asked the question. You know, for a payment, from the moment that the payment is initiated, the central bank begins to be interested in the parties that are involved. From the time that you initiate it to the time that it lands on the beneficiary's account, that whole chain is the interest of the regulator. And normally would regulate from end to end. From the moment it takes off, you see when you're online, you'd be on a website, you're shopping, and then you get to the point when you want to check out or you want to pay. Normally when you click or you want to use a wallet or you want to use your card, it will now take you to another website now that is now supposed to be secure and efficient and regulated by the Bank of Zambia. So in that case, if you are a merchant or you are a financial service provider and you're at the front end, but you use a payment gateway like the National Financial Switch, I mean, not the switch necessarily, but you use a payment system to process that payment, whoever is in that chain is the interest of the central bank. And most of the times you find that each aspect or each stakeholder has got a license to be able to provide that service, because we don't want to regulate part of the chain and then the money doesn't get to where it's supposed to get to. And then you can't go in there as a regulator to see what could possibly go wrong. So we regulate the payment from the time it's initiated to the time that it lands. So whoever provides service, whoever you will use, supply that product or service, we'll also look at the arrangements that you have. But as Jimmy said, please submit the description of your product, then we'll be able to guide you.
Great. I have a question from Natalie Simpamba. She's asking, if a startup is admitted into the sandbox, will they have access to the National Financial Switch?
It will depend. I think it also ties into the question. I mean the aspect I spoke to. In providing a payment, there are various processes. There's the payment, maybe there's some clearing that takes place, and maybe there's even some settlement that may take place. And though these processes are different, separate, and they've got different risk profiles, and perhaps those services are being provided by different people. So if they are going to want to use the National Financial Switch, we are going to assess. Remember, we said this regulatory sandbox sort of like is an engine that allows, it should allow. You know, it's not like we're saying we're going to develop a product and the rules are this and they'll remain like that. They're actually very flexible. And depending on the viability of the product, the safety, we may even allow them to use other partners who are also willing. That partner must also be willing to take up the risk. This is a startup and they haven't yet been licensed. Would you like to test this? And we're going to be very interested in that regard to make sure that the risk is managed. If we don't have to do that, we might not do that. So it all depends. Remember, we are being very flexible, and most of these products, Simonza, when you look at them, they are totally different in the way that they operate. They are totally different in the way in which you provide services. You might, for example, you might look at Zamtel Kwacha or Airtel Money or MTN Money. The way these products are provided is very different. So the risk profile for what you might term as this is just the normal mobile money may be quite different from entity to entity, and depending on how they have created that product. So possibilities, it's a world of possibilities. That's what the sandbox is there to do. As long as it's managed safely, it's got a lot of possibilities.
All right, great. Will the guidelines be available on the website? Some people are already getting onto the website. A number of people have already started asking about visiting the website right now and looking for the guidelines. Or are they only available via email at the moment?
Jimmy, do we have them on the website? If not, we will load them as soon as possible. I think they give a fairly good guidance on how people must proceed, and it's important that we have them out there. But for those of us who can reach us on this email, I'll share the email, payment systems. Is it payment systems returns, Jimmy, or just payment systems?
PSD returns.
PSD returns yes. at boz.zm. Yeah. You can get
share that with Smooth.
We'll still share it so that people can actually get to us even after this session.
All right, great. Yeah, if you can share it with me in the chat, then we can share it with everybody else. The Securities Exchange Commission also launched a sandbox recently. Somebody would like to know how different these two sandboxes are going to be.
That's a good question. Actually, we did a lot of collaboration with the Securities Exchange in terms of the two sandboxes. So the SEC sandbox actually will focus on the entities or the services that are provided or regulated under SEC. And we did have a lot of input into their sandbox as well, while we also had a lot of feedback and also input from themselves. And actually, as of this morning, I think we received some communication asking that we nominate somebody from the Bank of Zambia to work with the technical team. That is how the sandbox will, the good thing is that we've already got that linkage, and we should be able to test products that fall within both regulators. You see, like the way the mobile money service providers will fall under ZICTA on one hand, and also ourselves on another hand. When it comes to the financial services, it will be the Bank of Zambia regulating. When it comes to the technology, it will be ZICTA. Same with SEC. If there's a product that SEC has put in the sandbox and there's a payment aspect to it, they may refer it to us, or we may have input into their sandbox. And it's also going to be a similar arrangement. If we note that a product has got certain issues that should be regulated by SEC, we'll certainly reach out to SEC to be part of the assessment or the evaluation of the product.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Just to add to that, so yes, the two are quite very similar, except to focus on our mandate, but there will be a lot of the cooperation between Bank of Zambia and SEC has been there for quite some time, and even in implementing this sandbox, that's going to be a good area to rely on, especially for expertise.
Oh, great. So Wesam Esdin is asking, and he speaks, is asking particularly around limitations about operating within the sandbox. So first of all, what are the limitations of operating? And they're particularly interested in knowing, when you say that it's a limited environment for a subset of consumers, how do you define the word? How do you define subset? So what's a subset of consumers? And then further to that, what's the testing period that a new product or service can expect to be in the sandbox for?
Thank you,
Jim, you
Simon.
want to take that?
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
probably...
In terms of time period, at application stage, the maximum that can be given is 1 year. But however, there's an option to extend that by a further year. So somebody cannot consecutively be in the sandbox over 2 years. And in terms of the subset, we ask the applicant to submit a test plan. So they will tell us the number of customers they would want, the objectives of their test, the approach they want to use in conducting their test. So each case will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. When we look at the risk management framework that they're proposing, we also look at the risk profile of their product. Then we'll determine, is it safe for this product to go into provinces, or it's safe to test it out, let's say, at an educational facility or within one town. So it will be on a case-by-case basis, and the applicant will have to convince the bank or submit their justification as to why this number of customers it will be safe for them to try out with that. So there's no hard and fast rule to say a maximum of 1 million customers or what. Like Mrs. Kamuza was putting it, it's a world of possibilities. We'll look at your risk management framework to see if it is safe and convenient for you to test with this number of customers. Remember, we're trying to promote innovation. At the same time, we must ensure that there's a financial stability and integrity as regulators.
Oh, great. Interesting question from Stuart here. I think Mrs. Kamuza, you might be interested in taking this one. Will the Bank of Zambia take any equity in the startups in the event that it's successful in the sandbox stage and is now fully licensed?
Unfortunately, we don't take any stake in any regulated entity. But as Jimmy said when he was speaking, he said one of the benefits of the sandbox is access to finance. You know, when you go out there and you're looking for investors, you've got more chance of getting an investor if you say that this product was actually tested with the regulator and it passed the testing stage. So no, we don't take any stake, and it's really a way in which you can access finance with other stakeholders, not the central bank.
Great. Yes.
Yeah, so like Miriam has correctly put it, we don't take any stake. In the same way, we don't benefit from any returns. Even the risks that may be related to the product, whether customer risk or business risk, also that is borne by the applicant or the participant. So we're not enjoying any returns, and also the risk is totally assumed by the participant and not the bank.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Lav Kapesa from Facebook says the Bank of Zambia is very friendly and accommodating with their customer service. However, this sandbox process sounds like it's overwhelming as a startup trying to get a license. I would assume that this is meant to make it easier for startups. So I think maybe just to assure them that that's what the intention is.
Jimmy, you want to assure?
It's a very simple process. If you look at our application, it's probably three pages or so. If you compare that to the normal licensing, it will take quite some work. So this is ideally aimed to make it easy for you to introduce your product or innovation to the market. Miriam already advised, please get in touch with us or advise you. Some things or some terms may seem technical. You're using business language, maybe we're using regulatory language, but otherwise this is a simple process and we'll guide you through it. That's our job and we're here to guide you.
Great. Speaking of new technologies, there's a question around cryptocurrencies in the sandbox. So what is the Bank of Zambia's stance on cryptocurrencies within the regulatory sandbox? Could the Bank of Zambia eventually endorse the use of cryptocurrencies in day-to-day payments, even as stores of value, as a hedge against the devaluation of the kwacha?
So I think the Bank of Zambia's stand on cryptocurrency was made clear in a statement that was issued by the central bank. some years back, in that we don't regulate this space, and anybody who participates in this space should be mindful of the risks that are related with participating in cryptocurrency. But like we said, anything is possible, and we are open to innovations. And if you are able to come to us and demonstrate to us that your product will benefit the customer, it will benefit the country, it will benefit the wider population, we should be able to look at it and advise and guide. We are very open, Simons.
Great. Jesse Himuyanga would like to know, given the 1-year period that a product enters the sandbox, the entity that is running the product, the startup or the corporate that is running the product in the sandbox, if they have another product, whilst they already have another product in the sandbox, can they bring a second product into the sandbox?
It will have to be a fresh application, and it also depends on how this second product comes in. Normally, with the current process, yes, we could evaluate one product for you, and you go out on the market and start providing it. Then at the end of the day, you come up with other products. You come back to the Bank of Zambia and seek approval for those other products. So while you're testing, if you come up with another product that may not be connected to the product you're testing, we may ask you to put in a fresh application. Normally, what we'd want is for you to come up front and tell us what it is you're going to test. And that way we're able to manage the risk, because it's a product that we've evaluated before it came into the sandbox. So if you start bringing in other dimensions that might complicate the evaluation of that other product, we might advise you to apply again. But if it's an issue that actually supports the other product, we might be able to allow you to bring in that aspect into the other product. So it all depends. Like we said, this is very dynamic. It's very dynamic.
Yeah. If somebody had a product that, if somebody, and this is reading from Nisa Swale, if somebody has a product that wants to get involved in the binding or purchase of government securities such as term deposits, can they apply to get into the sandbox?
Jimmy?
I think it's a world of possibilities. So if they bring that product and if it falls within the mandate of the bank, that is something that we'll be able to look at.
Oh, great. And I think this also responds to the fact that there is also the Securities Exchange Commission sandbox. So it's a question of which, I don't know if you use the word jurisdiction, but which regulator oversees that product or service, for them to get clarity around that, so that they know which regulator they should be speaking to, I imagine.
Sure.
Yeah, great. So we've got, are regulated entities exempt from any potential regularity breaches that may occur during the testing of the product, seeing as it will be under the watch of the Bank of Zambia? This is from Tandiwe Balashi on Facebook.
Just go through that question again, Smoother.
So are regulated entities exempt from any potential regulatory breaches that may occur during the testing of the product, seeing as it will be under the watch of the Bank of Zambia?
I think one of the key eligibility criteria is that if there's any regulation that the applicant feels needs to be relaxed. So the trick there is to be forthright and say, in trying out this product, we feel that we may not be able to meet this requirement here, and we ask the bank to relax this requirement. So once that is communicated in that application, then they would have gotten approval to sort of go ahead with that product under those terms and conditions. The idea of the sandbox is not to breach regulations, but to sort of relax and to not allow regulation to be a roadblock. But again,
just to add on to Jimmy, remember in the beginning I actually said that if we're going to relax any regulation, we must be comfortable that you have addressed the risk. So we're not going to allow anything that is risky to go out there. We're not going to relax regulation and increase the risk. No, you must be able to demonstrate that, look, you've got this regulation here. Let me give an example of KYC. If our regulations, this is just hypothetical, if our regulations were saying, look, you need to come with physical copies to prove that it's me, then I have to look at you and make sure that the face on the NRC is yourself. I have to physically verify you. Then somebody comes up with a technology that actually, the reason why I'm asking you to do that is because I want to verify and be certain that you are the person who either wants to open an account or wants to carry out this transaction. But if you can demonstrate to me that using technology, which we have allowed in some cases, you can be able to identify me. There are people who use biometrics. You can use in other countries, they are using all sorts of ways in which to verify that really indeed this is Miriam. If you're able to demonstrate to me that your product is able to give me that level of comfort, then maybe I'll say this regulation that I created can be relaxed for this particular product. And let's see how far it goes. And then in the future, maybe for products that are similar to those, we would be comfortable because we know that the risk has been mitigated. Miriam can be verified with almost 100% certainty that this is indeed Miriam that is performing this particular transaction. So it's not just a thing of we breach or we relax any regulation just because, no, we are here to provide an enabling environment that will be good for you as the service provider or the developer product, good for the customer, it protects the customer. It's also good for other entities and the stakeholders and the nation at large. It shouldn't be something that causes or injects more risk into the financial system.
Great. Here's, yeah, I guess we use the word innovation a lot and the word innovative, and sometimes people are wondering whether we misapply it or apply it. So how do we define an innovative product that will be coming into the sandbox? Like, who defines what's innovative, and how do we know that this is innovative? How will the Bank of Zambia determine that, yes, this is an innovative product and should come into sandbox, or should just go directly and apply for a license?
You see, the good thing about the central bank is that you regulate all the people who provide payment systems in Zambia. You also regulate all the people who provide banking services in Zambia. And before you license them, you have the opportunity to see what they have to offer. So when you apply, as the central bank will be able to determine that really this is something new, and this is something that is innovative and it's going to contribute to financial inclusion. So we have that opportunity as the central bank to be able to easily determine that.
Oh, great. Do we have any further questions? I think, what are the requirements towards foreign companies and foreign founders and directors? I think you went over this, but I think there's an interest in finding out if a foreign company wants to come into the sandbox, or a company has foreign founders or directors participating in the sandbox, what would you be looking for from them?
Jimmy?
The additional requirements for a foreign national who, first it has to be a Zambian company registered with PACRA, but if there are foreign nationals involved, then we require security screening from their country of origin. So basically we're just doing a fit and proper test to see that these people can be admitted into the financial sector.
So there will be people who will bring innovations, maybe that are already out there in the world, but not here in Zambia. So they have to put up a company here at the Bank of Zambia. Then we begin to do our normal due diligence and screening just to make sure that they are registered here and they perhaps have been allowed in their jurisdictions to also provide such services. There's a lot that goes on in the background just to check that.
Oh, great. So yeah, I think that, so that is clear, is that the entity must first and foremost be registered in Zambia with PACRA, which is our company registration agency, as part of the process of them applying to get into to apply to access the sandbox. Great, awesome. Yeah. Yes. So for any innovations that were put on the market prior to the implementation of the sandbox, will will the Bank of Zambia grant access to participation in the sandbox for such products? That's a good question. So is a product already operating without a license and then trying to get into the sandbox, or are they testing prior to getting into the sandbox at the moment?
Ideally, they should have gotten a license for them to test, but given the sandbox, it provides an opportunity for them to regularize that and come under the oversight of the Bank of Zambia. So would encourage them to approach the bank.
Great. And when you talk about, yes?
In other words, people do develop products out there, but they are not allowed to test them with the public. They need to be licensed with the central bank first before they can carry out any test or provide these products to the public.
And it's also okay for them to find out whether something requires licensing or not. If they're unsure about whether or not their product or service requires licensing, would it be better for them to ask you for clarity and to know whether or not it requires licensing?
In fact, what we encourage is for them to get in touch with us, even as they develop the product. They don't need to wait until they've completely developed the product. They can get in touch with us and we'll guide them.
Great. Back to the question around screening of the founders and directors. Any indication as to what you look for with regards when you're screening people who are applying to participate in the sandbox? Security screening, to be precise.
So what we're looking for is personal information on the people involved with the company. So we will look at their CVs. There are some forms that we require that they fill out. So then we do security screening, basically with state agencies, just to check that those people do not have any record anywhere.
All right, great. Back to the question around PACRA registration. To participate in the regulatory sandbox, Chinyanta Mwenya would like to know, can a sole proprietor startup be onboarded to the regulatory sandbox?
It has to be an organization, a certificate of incorporation, a registered company, or an association. Basically, there should be an organization of some rules, because that then also acts as a control. If we were to give it to an individual today, I give it to Simunza, today is here, tomorrow is here, it's very hard to monitor and oversee that. So that's why it has to be an organized endeavor.
Great. Other than that, talking to security requirements to join the sandbox, will there be any, from a tech point of view, will there be things like penetration tests, vulnerability on the systems, assessments carried out before they come into the sandbox, or will that be part of them being in the sandbox where that testing is carried out?
So on issues like penetration testing, those are the same things when we're speaking about risk management framework.
Yes.
So if you're introducing a system, then you demonstrate to us that you've done such this and this has passed so and so. So those are part of the things we should put in measure if you are if it's a tech-based, to show that these are the safeguards that will protect both your business and the customers that you are targeting.
Great.
And in some cases, we might call on an expert to actually come and help us in that regard. We can also draw from our resources in ICT. Remember, I told you the team will have ICT staff as well to review these products. So we should be able to carry out some of those tests and ensure that the products are safe.
Great, thank you. That wraps up the questions that we have. And we are at, we are 1 hour past the mark from where we started. So Mrs. Kamuza, Mr. Kuvaras, would you have any final comments to invite people to come and apply for to participate in the sandbox?
Jimmy, you want to say yours?
Okay, maybe I can go first. So my encouragement would be to startups, and ideally that's why we're even in engagement with Bongo Hive. We know you deal with a lot of these entities, so it's just to sort of give you this information, encourage startups that may want to be involved in either fintechs or payment services to approach the bank and take advantage of this opportunity. You have access to a regulator, there are various benefits that you can get from participating in the regulatory sandbox. So get in touch with us and we'll guide you through the process. You don't know where the next big thing comes from. This could just be an opportunity for you to introduce a product that can make a market contribution to the financial sector. So we encourage startups to approach the bank, and we're sharing this information with Bongo Hive because we know many of the startups approach entities, innovation hubs like Bongo Hive. So Bongo Hive will be a key partner in this, and thank you, Smoother, for this opportunity. We'll also be counting on you.
For me, my encouragement will probably be to the banks and the non-banks that are already existing. I think a lot has happened, especially with the coming on of the COVID. I think from last year, from the time that we started fighting the COVID pandemic, there are a number of issues that have come out, and the use of technology and digital financial services is quite critical in ensuring that we continue to provide financial services. So for the banks and also the non-banks that are already licensed, perhaps this is also an opportunity for them to think beyond. We have seen some banks that have taken big steps in this regard to just digitize some of their services just to make sure that they are still out there and they can reach more people. The goodness about digitizing is that your reach it becomes endless. You can reach a lot of more people by digitizing and making it possible for people to access your services remotely. So for the banks and also for the non-banks that are already licensed by the Bank of Zambia, this is a tool that you can also participate in and develop products and services that will speak to the needs of the markets. And just to share a little bit, just to back up what we are saying, last year alone, when the COVID began, we had about 4.8 million digital wallets out there. And by the end of 2020, this figure had grown by 77%. Now, that is tapping into areas that were previously not tapped. And this was enabled mainly by digital financial services. When you look at the volumes and the values that were passing through these channels, for the point of sale, for the banks especially, we saw significant increases of about 75% in terms of value. For the mobile payments, which are also provided by banks as well as the non-banks and the fintechs, there was a jump of about 119% in terms of value. So you can see that the volumes and the values moving through these digital channels is really increasing significantly. And really, this is a place where you could try out some of the things that you've about, some of the things that are already on your drawing board. You contact us, please, and tell us about your products, and we'll guide. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bongo.
Oh, thank you very much. I think it's been a real pleasure for us to have this conversation out here with everybody else. And also working with startups, we are always keen to find out how new products and new services that actually take the world that actually help customers do the things that they want to do. So whether it's businesses being able to operate and collect money and deliver products more easily, or whether it's people sending money to one another, sending money to family, or saving money or investing, and seeing how technology is playing a big part and a big role in digital products are now playing a big role in that. And also is that what's very, very interesting is how, given the context of Zambia and given the context of Africa, how we can design our own solutions because we understand the context, we understand the systems, we understand the people that we are working with and their dreams and their desires. And the two takeaways that I've had from this conversation that we had is your availability to open up to people to engage you and to contact you and to work alongside them in bettering their products so that they can get into the market even before they get licensed, even before they get fully licensed, but that they can take the steps to perfecting, to working on their products step by step to be able to do that. And the second thing is that it's a world of possibilities. So nothing is shut out until until the conversation is at least had. So even though we're thinking about it, we build it, come over with a prototype, to work together with the central bank to at least find out whether it can then get into the market. And this is one step towards getting into that. And not forgetting that for the time period, any of you that are working in fintech, for the time period, access to the sandbox is currently free. Not forever, but it's currently free. So take advantage of this period to apply. Now, a lot of people are asking about how they can. Access the sandbox. You can email PSD, the letters PSD at boz.zm, not .co.zm, but .zm. So I'll repeat, PSD at boz.zm, or call, if you're in Zambia, 0211 399 300. If you are going to call, 0211 399 300. If you want to remember what PSD stands for, it stands for Payment Systems Department. So you're emailing the Payment Systems Department, PSD at boz.zm. So PSD at the Bank of Zambia in Zambia. So PSD at boz.zm, and they will send you a copy. Mrs. Kamuza and Mr. Kuvaras have offered to make sure that the guidelines are available on the Bank of Zambia website soon, but in the meantime, they are accessible. They have availed themselves. You can call them and you can email them, and in doing so, you'll be able to access this information. So I will just quickly post this in the panel for you to be able to also access, so that you can also get it from there. So you've got the email address, you've got the phone number. It will be available on the website, and so any queries or any other questions that have not been taken in this webinar, we believe that they will gladly answer those questions for you, and that you will be able to build products that customers love with the assistance of the Bank of Zambia. And at Bongo Hive, we work with great minds building viable solutions that will change the world. And we're here to help you change the world, even with financial solutions. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Samoza. Thank you, everyone.
Shikuishipya chilete nsansa nafyo nobe unjikata kumutima nako kwa pola ifila mbandila efya bukali yo chite mwikomfwa mukatika mutima wandi ala teti kula yempili teti kula yemishitu ekupela iwe chite mwiko chandi ichabulo bufi Echabula kulwa, echabula kalwa.